I am so excited to have on the podcast today Tanya Kipe, the founder of Kipe Academy in Polk City, Florida. Tanya was a public school teacher for over a decade and then launched Kipe Academy last January with one student and now has 26 students, seeing remarkable growth over that period of time. So, Tanya Kipe, welcome to the Liberated podcast.
Thanks for having me, Kerry.
I'm so glad to talk with you. You have such an interesting story from public school teacher to then homeschooling mom while you were still teaching, but homeschooling your younger child to education entrepreneur and launching a micro school that's now growing, flourishing, and inspiring other founders across Florida and beyond. So let's start, Tanya, if we could, with I guess the early story of what made you go into education to begin with. Why did you decide to become a public school teacher?
When I was younger, I loved the teaching idea. My grandmother was can't talk. My grandmother was a custodian for the public school in my area, and so I would often get to go with her and help clean up the school. And she would bring home extra supplies, so I get to play school at home. And so I just really loved that idea.
Yeah, and so then tell us about your experience being a public school teacher. What grades did you teach? What was that experience like? Sort of from the fictional pretend play of what you thought teaching would be to what it actually was. What was all that like?
So I had the opportunity to teach first grade, fourth grade, and then come back to first grade, and then I looped up with my class to second grade. So I had a little experience in the elementary range there.
Mm.
When I first started, I loved it. It felt exciting and new, and giving all those different experiences to find your footing and find out what works and what doesn't work. And then the longer I was in the system, the more it became cookie cutter like. And
Mm.
so no matter what teacher in your group was, doing, we pretty much had to be following the same thing down the hallway. So like if our boss walked in, everything had to be like finishing each other's sentences as we walked down the hallway. Our task had to be pretty similar. Our stories had to be the same. So there was no differentiation, although they were screaming differentiation at you. That was more for in small group time, but not for whole group time. And so you'd have kids who are so flustered because when I was teaching second grade, over 50% of our students were coming in below grade level. So you can't teach second grade content to kids and expect them to comprehend and understand it when they're still on letters and sounds. They still, some of them couldn't write their name properly. So they're still in the very beginning stages. And then you're pushing them to do things that are one or two levels above where they are at. They're screaming frustration at us by crawling on the floor and crying and throwing tantrums and things like that. And it was just really frustrating. And so it's like the longer I was doing this, the more I started making that connection, like, oh, well, that's why they're frustrated. Yeah, they had some things going on at home and, some kids come with trauma or whatever. But it was just frustrating on my end because it's like you're trying to sneak and do what you know is best for the student, but you're trying not to get caught. And you're like, okay, this just doesn't feel ethical. Like I shouldn't have to sneak around to do something to make my student feel successful and to be happy. And so from that point, my own child was starting to leave middle school and going into high school. And I just saw the stresses that he went through, and he had an IEP, and it was just really frustrating for him. And then I was talking to some of my former students, and they're telling me their experiences. And I was like, I still want to teach. I don't want to be one of those people that leaves education and takes on another career, which is okay for them. But for me, I still wanted to teach. And so it just wasn't that magical thing that I thought it was going to be or that I witnessed as a child. And so that's why I wanted to start a school.
Yeah, I want to definitely get into your launch story in just a minute, but were you noticing over, I guess, the decade that you were in the public elementary schools that there was a shift to being more cookie cutter, or was it like that from the beginning of your experience there, and you just began to notice it more? I guess what was happening there in terms of trends?
I feel like every few years there was another trend. It's like, hey, when I first started, it's like the principal was going to walk in and ask the kids specifically, like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And how is it going to help you in your future? And then then when that little time period was up, we're moving to the next thing. Now, this has to be posted on the wall. Everyone's has to look the same. The students have to regurgitate this, or you're not going to get points on your evaluation. It's like And then we went to the next thing. Okay, now we're going to have new standards. So everyone redo everything you've been taught and all of your lesson plans and learn new curriculum at the same time. And then we went to another trend where, okay, we're going to learn this whole new program of how we're going to teach to the students. And it's more student led versus teacher led. So then it's like every time you feel like you get a grip on something, they switch it to something else. And it just, you always feel like you're not doing good enough.
Yeah, and your older child went through the system, went through high school, had a decent experience, but it was with your, I think you said at the time that your child moving from middle school into high school, that you decided to do something different for his education. I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about that experience of choosing homeschooling for him while you were still a public school teacher.
Yeah, so his IEP was not getting met, and he was coming home angry and stressed out. And we did not like that. And I didn't like him going to school and feeling like he was struggling. But also at the same time, we were having that ethical dilemma too. Is like we teach our kids to be respectful to adults, but when the adults are withholding your accommodations and then you have to teach your child how to advocate for themselves, then it feels like your child is being rude to the teacher. It just was all feeling uncomfortable. So we're like, what other options can we look for? So we decided to do the homeschooling route. And in doing so, I was still new to homeschooling and still trying to plan my school. So we basically were doing school at home. And then he was like, finally, he's like, Mom, like, what are you doing? Like, I thought this was going to be different. And so then I had to stop and evaluate too. Oh, wait, what should this look like? Or how can this look like? And so when we made that shift, he actually started to excel and started to learn things that he would have never have learned in the public school setting. So he learned like welding and building and engineering, bartering, trading, managing money, a lot of things that definitely he would never have learned in the public setting. And so that was another thing, like in help to help me with launching our school is like, what can we do to help the kids still get their academic pieces, but still also allow them to learn and explore options?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. I mean, here you were a veteran teacher working within the school district, and you still struggled to have your son's IEP accommodations met. And you kind of knew the inner workings of the district. So you can just imagine families who aren't as connected to a district and what some of the hurdles and barriers they confront must be like. Have you noticed that too, that it is more families, especially with kids who might have special learning needs or IEPs, who are particularly gravitating toward out of system options?
Yes, I definitely agree with that. And I can say from our experience here, when we started in the fall, when we had our full-time group, it took us about a month, like 3 weeks to 4 weeks before we could all adjust together. Because I was coming from my teacher background, like everything has to be perfect. We have to be on the schedule. We have to do this. And so in my brain, I was still trying to do those things and still being worried that even though I knew there was no admin here to come like monitor me every second, I was still in that mindset of like everything has to go right. And then the kids were um, still learning me and also like afraid to make mistakes and afraid that their accommodations weren't going to be met. And so it just took us some time to work together and to understand, okay, if you're upset, that's cool. You're allowed to be mad. Take a break. Okay, you need to type. That's cool. Grab whatever you need. I can get what I need. I'm like, yeah, your pencil broke or you need a book or you need a fidget. You're welcome to get up and get it. I can get it by myself. And I'm like, yeah, it's okay. And even had one student like would stomp his foot and was like, you're being weird. Stop telling me it's okay to be mad. I'm like, but if you're frustrated, it's okay to be frustrated. There's nothing wrong with being frustrated. It's just how we handle it is going to determine, what steps we take next. So be mad. It's okay. And when you're calmed down, then we can talk about it. But like in the public setting, it's like, nope, this kid did this. It's time he's got to go to the office. Like there's no, they want you to handle it in the room, but at the same time, they don't give you space to handle it in the room. And so like here, we've just built that culture. Like it's okay to make mistakes. If you need something, I don't care what grade level you are. I don't care if you had an IEP or you didn't have an IEP at the public school or when you were previously homeschooling, get what you need. I want you to be a successful human.
I love that. So, Tanya, take us through the timeline of, you were homeschooling your son and still working in the district. At what point did you have this like light bulb moment of saying, I'm going to open a micro school? And what happened next?
So it was November 2021. And I remember I was driving in my car and I got this idea, start your school. And I'm like, who are you talking to? Because I'm the only one in this car. Like, no way, I'm not doing that. It's too big. Nope, not doing it. So I just like squashed it, and then it just kept popping up. You should do it. You should do it. So I told my best friend and she's like, yeah, you could totally do this. And so then I felt safe to tell, other people in my family. And so by February, well, I applied for our business license in January 2022, and then it was like official February 1st, 2022. And so from there, started planning the school, finding the right board members, applying for nonprofit status. And we just started evolving from there. So we started having our monthly board meetings, getting all the plans ready, networking, learning business pieces. Because I can teach, put me in a classroom, I'm good all day long, but I did have to learn all those business tips and tricks. So I joined with the National Microschooling Center. I met up with Amon from Kind Academy, and I participated in her Launch Your Kind program. I went to the Vela conference. So like all these little things that do just like really help to build your network and build your knowledge and awareness. And just nice to know that there are other teachers and founders out there that have the same passion and drive as you do. And what I found too is like it's completely different when you hang out with those guys. It's not like all the oh man and all the naggy and draggy things that you hear in the public school setting. It's like everyone's like so excited and like, here, let me share a tip with you. Here's an idea. Let me show you what's going on at my school. It's just completely different environment. It just feels amazing. And so just we started with one student in January 2024, and we had some problems trying to find a space prior to that. And so when we found our new space, everything's starting to work out for us in June 2024. And then here we are with 26 students.
Oh, such a great story. You're off to the races now, but so you got your business license, apply for nonprofit status in early 2022. Were you still working at the time, or when did you leave the public schools?
So I left the public school setting at June 2023.
June 2023.
Mhm.
And what was that like? Having been in the system for so long and now all of a sudden becoming an entrepreneur, right? Leaving all of those benefits and that consistent salary and now going off on your own. What was that like?
It was bittersweet because, like, I remember packing my stuff up, like, and being excited, but then I have moments of like, oh my gosh, I'm so sad I'm leaving, like, because I had been at the same school the entire career, and so then I was like sad about leaving my teammates and leaving my former students, and I'm like, I, like, not that you're a celebrity when you're a teacher, but like when you're walking the hallways, everyone's like, Miss Kipe, and all the kids. And so I knew I'd be leaving that too. And some of them still reach out to me and they'll write me on my YouTube or send me emails like, Miss Kipe, how are you? We've been following you. And so that's pretty cool. But what we built here with our new students is absolutely amazing. And so, like, I've got one student that's even said, Miss Kipe, I'm going to be staying here till college, so go ahead and start working on that. I'm like,
I
that's a
love
lot of
it.
pressure.
Yeah, so you left at the end of the academic year in 2023, and then
Mhm.
about 6 months later, officially launched Kipe Academy
Yes.
with one student. So share a little bit more about that because some listeners might be saying, I want to become an education entrepreneur. I want to start a micro school or a similar learning model. I don't know where to begin. And they might feel like, can you really start something with one student? What is that like? So maybe tell us, what the circumstances were that led to launching with that solo student to begin with.
So we thought we had a space located, um, and it didn't work out. So we thought we would be able to start in August, and it didn't work out. So I
Mm,
was like, what can we do in the meantime? So we regrouped with the board, and we're like, okay, let's at least start with tutoring. So that way,
mm,
like one-to-one tutoring, so we can start practicing, implementing those strategies that we do want to use. So honestly, it worked out really awesome. So it gave us that chance to practice slowly learning how to use the student information system, slowly learning how to do accounting, implementing those strategies and those units of study that we wanted to do. So it worked out actually in our best benefit, even though like at the time it was like feeling so stressful. Financially, it was a bummer because, I was hoping to have a regular paycheck, you know, by the end of summer, but I was able to use my retirement money, which is not ideal, but it did keep me afloat until it was time to get a full-time paycheck. But we started with the one student, and then we got two more students, and then it just kept slowly evolving. And so at each stage, it just kind of gave us a chance to practice and implement those things and get to see the success and feel the excitement. So it can be done. And so even though we didn't have a space, we were able to meet at the library, the city park, the baseball field. You could meet at their house. So there was a family that was meeting at their house. And so you just kind of see what your clients need and go from there.
Yeah, and you were running the program and still are as sort of a tutoring center,
Mhm.
even though now, of course, you offer full-time a full-time microschooling option for families to attend as, again, a full-time schooling alternative. And that tutoring option really provides that freedom and flexibility in terms of
Mhm.
time and space and meeting different students' needs. Could you share a little bit about how do you attract those initial students, right? Because it seems like if you can have that initial cohort, then it makes growing the program a bit easier. What advice do you have?
Another thing that I did too was the once a month weekend workshops at the city park. And
Mm,
so that was drawing in some families too. And even though some of those families were not necessarily um, lingering around to do like part-time tutoring, they were still able to tell their families, oh, okay, well, my friend said that you do tutoring. And so they were able to like network out because our weekend workshops are for any student, regardless of school choice. So it could be a public school student who just wants to come on the weekend to participate in the weekend workshop. And those are mostly themed around science. But the Facebook groups, going down to the park, if you see people, I keep business cards and like little slips in
mm.
my bag that say like what we offer. So just in case you hear somebody or you always run into like an aunt, an uncle, a grandma, somebody who knows somebody who their kid needs some support. And so even if they don't choose Kipe Academy, it was really good to get to know my neighboring micro school leaders and tutoring leaders because if they're not a fit for me, then I could start sending them and referring them to those guys. And then they were doing the same to me. And so that's how we've been able to also network and share clients.
Oh, that's so great. I love that collaborative focus among today's education entrepreneurs that, everyone has their own flavor, their own style, the students that they're serving, and you're able to just refer families to different micro schools now so they can find just the right fit for their child and their family. It's just such an exciting time. So tell us a little bit more about Kipe Academy, especially now, how it's operating with 26 students. I know you have the micro school option, you have an umbrella school, you have tutoring. Tell us all the different facets.
So our micro school program is the one where we are teaching in small group setting. So the kids are like in a one-room schoolhouse, and in the morning we start off with the academic component with reading. And so I'm pulling kids over for small groups, and while I'm working with them in small groups, they are working on their goals. So they've each got a goal sheet, and everyone's goals are different, and they know what they've got to do, and they make their check marks on there. So when it's time for recess, I can say like, "Are we ready to go?" And everyone's ready. And so we'll take a break, then we come back in and do math and then we will go into the science social studies piece. And so this is my favorite part because the kids have picked these topics and then we just took our adult background knowledge and stuff and created those units for them. So like right now we're doing Hot Wheels. And so we've been learning about the history of Hot Wheels. We learned about timelines by using the different logos from Hot Wheels and how it's evolved over time. So we're incorporating art and logos and timelines. And so like all the different pieces that involve like force and motion and speed and velocity. We've been learning about that and friction. We try to make our field trips match up with that as well. And then we do lunch and recess. And then afterwards, we come back and do mind and body art. And this particular group is not interested in music. I've tried multiple times. So we vote again whether we want to do inside or outside recess so they can work on that. And when I say recess, if we're in the gym, then they're doing like the physical motor activities like playing with basketballs and hula hoops and jump ropes. But if we're inside, then we're doing like STEM type things. We're like building with blocks and like right now our room is set up for Hot Wheels. So like they've got mechanic shops and things where they can build cars and pretend like they are the manager at the mechanic shop where they're charging people money and doing appointments and things like that where they're working with time. So we're incorporating some of those real world skills as well. And so that's our micro school program. Then
And
we
the
have
micro school program, sorry to interrupt, Tanya, but the micro school program is for K to fifth, K to
yes,
five. It's the
yes,
elementary school program and it's full time, 5 days a week. Is that right?
yes. We do 5 days a week. Yeah.
Yeah. So that, and then you have K to 12 offerings for some of these other programs. So that's what I think you were
Yes.
starting to say. Yep.
Yeah, so for K-12, we have the one-to-one tutoring. So you can either come individually, or some parents send their kids together as like a sibling group. And so then we can work with them and the different skills that they need during that time. So we have some families that do like 1 hour Monday and Thursday. And then we've got some families that are like, okay, I want my kids to come for 2 hours on Thursdays. And then some families are like, okay, I need you to do 3 hours on, because I've got 3 kids. I want you to come to my house on Tuesday and Thursday. And so like we can, support those families in that way. Some of our tutoring students who are like the part-time students are public school students, and some of them are homeschool students. So that way we can still support both of those types of families, regardless of what they decide to choose for their learning. And then we have the umbrella program. So those families who don't really want to have to deal with portfolio, but they still want to be registered as a private school. But with us, they also have the option to like participate with our online programs. They get invited to our field trips. When we do special things, they can be invited as well. So that way they still have a community to be with. I know there are some umbrella programs that are just like, it's for free. You're off on your own, do your own thing. We support our families. So that's a little difference in what we offer. Because there are some families that they don't want their kids on campus, and that's okay, but they still want that time to socialize or access to curriculum or access to whatever you're doing online. And then we have our weekend workshops that are once a month that are themed around science. And so this next one that we're doing is on candles and heat. And so the kids will come in and learn about heat and fire safety, and they'll get to create their own candle to take home.
Ah, so great.
So we also do portfolio evaluations for homeschooling families, and we do offer testing options. So if a family wants to do like the STAR test, we can do that with the student.
Yeah. Yeah, and so obviously the public school students that you're working with tutoring,
Mhm.
the families are, I assume, private pay for the tutoring, and obviously public schools tuition free. But the students who are attending the micro school, they're also attending at reduced tuition thanks to Florida's school choice programs. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about financial accessibility for KIPE Academy.
So most of our students are using the state scholarship funds. And so that's really helpful for the families. The families don't have to come out of pocket. Some families, the tuition is covered by the scholarship, and it's mostly like the third, fourth, and fifth graders. The scholarship doesn't cover everything, but at least they don't have to pay for the full amount.
Yeah.
And then I was going to say too, the public school, even though like they're public school students, there is a special scholarship that you can apply for, the New World Scholarship, that does help if you are behind academically. So you
Mm,
can do tutoring sessions. It doesn't pay for a lot, but it does help a little.
great. Yeah. And Florida, of course, becoming one of about a dozen states now to have universal school choice programs applying to all students, all K to 12
Mhm.
students throughout the state are eligible for access to these funds. And it's really making innovative programs like yours more widely accessible to more families
Mhm.
and encouraging the growth of models like yours because there is that ability for families to pay. So, could we talk a little bit more about that then, Tanya? What are you seeing around you? You mentioned collaboration with other micro schools. Florida, just seems to be booming in
Mhm.
terms of education innovation and opportunities there. What are you observing?
I'm observing the same. Like, since families are having the ability to choose what they want, I see in the Facebook groups for like homeschooling and for the scholarship program, parents are like getting to that point, if they were not already there, like, okay, I'm ready now. I'm ready. What do I do? What are the steps? And so I see a lot more of that happening now that we've hit that December mark. I know for us here in Polk County, we did a um, homeschool choice expo in October, and we were able to invite a lot of the micro school leaders and tutoring companies to come and just explain to families and show off all the different resources and options that are available for them. And so we did have a really great turnout for that. And I know for myself personally, like as this month has ended for December and now we're moving into January, I'm getting like a lot of interest forms for
Mm.
parents that are like, okay, I'm ready. Like, what do I need to do for August? What can I do to be prepared? And so even one of my current tutoring students, before they left today, the mom was like, all right, we're committed for next year. What do I need to do? And so,
Wow. For the
yeah,
micro school, for the
yeah,
full-time micro school.
yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think is attracting families to this model? Are they coming from conventional schools into homeschooling? Have they been homeschooling for a while? What are you seeing for your both your current microschooling families as well as some of these newcomers?
So for us, we had like a mix. Our micro school program is a mix of parents who already were homeschooling and a mix of people coming from the public school setting. But what I understand from my homeschooling families is that they tried the public setting and it didn't work for
Mm,
what they were expecting. And so I think here for us, we just give everyone that flexibility to learn the way they need to learn and give them the skills that they need. So I think that's really helpful because a lot of our kids came to us below grade level. And
mm.
so we get to meet them where they are. And then they don't have to come to school and feel inadequate or unworthy. They get to come here and be like, okay, Miss Kipe's going to give me what I need. And I'm not going to feel stupid. I'm going to just be happy where I am and look how far I've come. And so we spend a lot of time thinking about that too. And look where you were when you came here and look how much you've grown. And so just like that is pretty awesome too. And I think them telling their families, and not just from my school, but from my friend's school too, is like when that word of mouth starts going out, I think that's really helpful that families see, well, wait a minute, there are choices. This isn't scary.
Mm.
Because sometimes you'll hear pushback from relatives or your own family, like, no, we're not doing that. That's too difficult because they think that the pressure has to be all on the family. But with all the options available now, maybe you're really good at reading and math, but you don't want to teach electives. Your child can go learn electives somewhere else. Or maybe you want to teach the electives and put the academic piece on the tutors. That's okay too. It can look different. It doesn't have to be just all workbook and no socialization. And so I think that the options have evolved and I think that more people see what's available and they can find what fits and works for their family.
Yeah, and what have been some of the outcomes that you've noticed? You said, families are from word of mouth, learning about your program, learning about your successes that you've had with students there. What does that look like from both an academic perspective and non-academic perspective?
You mean like for our
Like
data?
outcomes. Yeah, like what are you seeing among your students in terms of academic growth and non-academic growth?
So we just did our STAR testing right before we went on the winter break, and that was awesome because everyone grew. So that was a awesome feeling for me. Is like, okay, now we have like solid data we can put down when we are doing grants and scholarship forms and like talking to the public about if our program works or not. Because we can say it, but sometimes people want to see it with scientific data or mathematical data. And so now like we just have that. Like before we you're taking your anecdotal notes and you're tracking how much they've grown on a test or an assessment. But when it's a norm reference test, people tend to, take it more seriously. And so like now we have that data to back up what we're doing, but also just seeing the kids, their handwriting's grown, even just like when you look at like their first paper that they ever did, because like we keep one of their originals up and we've been adding one paper per student on their clip chart over there. And so they can even flip through and like, wow, look at your handwriting when you first started. Now look at it. And we've even got some kids who are typing. And so that's been awesome. And another thing too is the social piece. It's
Mm.
like when we first came, we were all like a little on edge trying to figure out how this is going to work and what this looks like. And is this going to be successful? And, like thinking about our prior experiences and then where we are now, we're all just chill, like, oh, hey, I think he didn't sleep well. So maybe we need to give him some space. Or like the kids can come to you and be like, hey, I need a minute. I'm like, okay, cool. Or, they're learning to advocate for their needs. Um, if we're running low on something, like, hey, Miss Kite, put this on the Amazon list, or like, can you buy some more, whatever. And so, like, I've seen them grow to even advocating for what they need. And like when we were doing the unit on basketball, they were asking for specific things. They're like, okay, remember in the last unit we had this item. Can you try to find something comparable so we can have that similar experience with this topic? I'm like, oh, cool. So like, it's neat to see them being able to do that and to ask for what they need to.
It's amazing. And so for the micro school program, how many students are you currently serving and where do you see that growth happening over the next year?
So we currently have 9 students who come here Monday through Thursday, and then we have 14 that come total on Friday. Because we have a few like homeschool families that just come for Fun Friday. So right now, some of our tutoring students, they want to be here full time next year. So Our part-time tutor is deciding that she's going to probably be here next year with us full time. And so then we will be able to add another class. Um, I don't want to grow so big too fast. So we'll go from there. And then, but the goal after that would be to add middle school and then from there high school. So that is our baby steps. Like, I don't want to be so big that we lose our community vibe and feel though. We want everyone to know each other and just not be strangers in the hallway.
Yeah, just amazing. And right now, the full-time tuition is just over $7,500
Mhm.
annually. Again, many or most or all attending tuition free or nearly so through the school choice programs, or how does that look?
Yeah, pretty much. I think we have only two self-paying families, and
Wow.
everyone else is utilizing the scholarship.
And even though they're registered homeschoolers, they're able
Mhm.
to access KIPE Academy and use those school choice funds as they choose. And so, where do you see this going, Tanya, over the next few years? The microschooling movement, more generally, I mean, both in Florida, kind of fueled by school
Mhm.
choice programs, but nationally as well. You mentioned the National Microschooling Center, sort of this national movement towards innovative education. Where do you see this all going in your neck of the woods and beyond?
I do feel that more, especially in Florida, it's easier because we do have school choice and we have scholarships available. So I do think there's room for everybody. And I think that nationally, as I'm watching more states get ESA funding of some style or type, I think that when each state continues to evolve and accept that option, that more schools will be able to populate in those areas as well. And I'm in a lot of Facebook groups for teachers as well as like for music and PE because here we teach electives. So like I like to keep up with what's trending or what other people are experiencing. So even in there today, I saw a music teacher who started here in Florida her own school, and she's
Mm,
also incorporated art there. So it's not just academic teachers, it's also
mm,
elective teachers too that are experiencing that stress in the public setting and deciding to branch out. So it
mm.
was neat to see that too, because most of the times you hear like a regular education teacher, but it's also cool to see those special and elective teachers also stepping out to incorporate the microschool world.
Ah, that is so exciting. As we begin to wind down, Tanya, what's some of your advice for new founders or maybe other current public school teachers considering breaking off on their own, becoming education entrepreneurs? What advice do you have for them as they get started?
So I think that you should definitely do it. It's a totally amazing. It's a different level of stress. It's freeing and I love it. I would not change it. I would never go back. But I do say if you are not busy business savvy and you are still wanting to step out into the micro school world, find another school in your area that's looking to expand and grow, that needs another teacher, another tutor, so you can dive into it already. But if you're willing to take the time to learn all the business savvy pieces, then go ahead and start learning now before you leave the public setting. Join the National Microschooling Center. Do programs like Launch Your Kind or Prenda or um, KaiPod Catalyst, any of those type programs, Rebel Educator, that have programs that will help walk you through all the steps. Find some of those. Join Facebook groups. Learn the laws and the legal things that you need to know about homeschooling or whether you can use microschool or schooling even as a legal term in your state. So there's a lot
Mm.
of things to know if you're going to take on this journey, but it's totally amazing, totally doable, and you won't regret it.
And what about dealing with zoning and finding a location? I know that was a headache for you for a while. Any tips
Mhm.
there?
That was the biggest headache. Um, Also, you're going to go through these trials where you're finding places and seeing if it's going to work for your budget. And sometimes it doesn't work out and you're going to be stressed or upset. But also, it's showing you what you don't want and what you can learn from that situation. So every time that you hit a bump, it's okay, feel your human feelings. But then, like, what can you learn from the situation so that you can improve for the next time?
I love it. Such great advice. So, if my listeners and viewers want to find out more about Kipe Academy, connect with you, Tanya, and follow your progress, what's the best way for them to do that?
So you can go to our website, www.kipeacademy.org. We have our Facebook page and Instagram page, Kipe Academy. You can also find me on Microschool Innovation Hub on Facebook.
Well, best wishes to you. Look forward to connecting with you in person again soon. And Tanya Kipe, thank you so much for being on the Liberated podcast.
Thanks for having me, Kerry.